Ilara stood frozen, eyes locked on the tactical display. The alien ships, sleek, crescent-shaped, and pulsing with iridescent light, had broken formation. Not to attack, not to surround. To flee. They've initiated full-burn vectoring. Away from us, Gravemind confirmed, its tone tinged with static. No attempt to jam us. No weapons lock. That doesn't make sense, Ilara muttered. They had the numbers. Tech advantage. We're a rusting coffin with a spinal railgun and a ghost crew, Gravemind responded after a beat. Perhaps not all ghosts are quiet. Ilara stepped forward and watched the feed. 5 alien cruisers, turning tails like frightened predators. Not a tactical retreat. Not posturing. Panic. She inhaled slowly. Replay their reaction. From the moment I spoke. The footage rewound, her image grainy but firm on the comms relay. Her voice broadcast into the void. She saw it this time. The subtle shift. The ships jolted mid-burn, as if something gripped their minds. Then, retreat. Ilara, Gravemind said softly. I believe they recognized the words, but they didn't respond in kind. Perhaps they weren't allowed to. A chill prickled down her spine. For 20 years, Ilara had wandered dead systems, collecting whispers, dodging patrols, watching star after star fall into silence. Now here, in this forgotten pocket of the galaxy, came contact, but not with open hands. With fear. Do we have anything from the probe? Cultural data? Architecture scans? She asked. Uploading now, Gravemind replied. The display shifted. Massive towers built into moons. Scaffolds stretching through asteroid belts like gossamer threads. Spires reflecting artificial light in perfect fractal symmetry. Not a single mark of individuality. No signs of disrepair. No murals, no banners, no life. Every structure looked grown, not built. And more disturbingly, they all shared one feature. A 3-ringed sigil, interlocking, cold, exact, branded. Onto every surface. Control, she said. Not civilization. Subjugation. Gravemind added. One pattern repeats every 12.9 seconds in their data stream. Encrypted and layered across every frequency. Buried in light pulses, relay syncs, and gravitational tethers. Show me. The waveform appeared, nested. Spirals, shifting harmonics, impossible to isolate. But Ilara saw it. Not code, a warning, or a leash. Someone's holding them by the throat, she murmured. And they just heard a human voice. Ilara's eyes narrowed. So who did they think we were? Silence. Then the lights flickered. Unknown burst ping, Gravemind announced. From deep orbit, not from the retreating ships. Another signal? Not a signal. A ping. Narrow beam, quantum echo-based. It scanned us. Ilara's heartbeat slowed. From what? I don't know. The tactical screen began filling with distortion. Gravity lensing. Subspace haze. Then, there it was. A shape. At first, it looked like a mountain. Then, a world. Then something worse. Massive. Silent. No propulsion trails. Just there. Materializing like a nightmare. It was a ship. A construct of impossible scale. Kilometers upon kilometers wide. Built in rings that rotated against one another. Spiraling like the iris of a closing eye. And it was facing them. Gravemind's voice dropped to a whisper. We've been noticed. The weight of the moment crashed through the bridge like a gravitational wave. Ilara's breath caught in her throat. The last Titan-class warship, the grave of a civilization, now seen by something vast and ancient. Something that made the fleeing alien cruisers seem like children. Power signature? She asked. None. Gravemind replied, It's not emitting anything. Not even radiation. As if it was never turned off. Ilara's hand hovered over the comms panel. "Commander," Gravemind warned. "If you hail it, I won't." Then what? She didn't answer. Instead, she walked to the old weapons console. Her fingertips brushed over the etched names once more. Her crew, her family, her fallen. She remembered the last days of Earth, the final broadcast before. The silence. Humanity hadn't surrendered. They had simply been cut off. Severed from the galaxy, but not erased. She activated the spinal railgun's priming sequence, slow and deliberate. Not to fire. Not yet. Just to let it know. They weren't prey. She turned to the viewport, voice low, calm, defiant. "Gravemind. If that thing so much as flinches toward us, we go out swinging." Alara nodded. "Let the galaxy remember what happens when you corner the last human warship." Outside, the construct remained still, watching, and far behind it, other. Beacons began to flicker to life in the black. Not one, dozens, maybe more. Contact had been made. But it was not first contact. It was the reopening of a chapter the galaxy thought buried. And now, they remembered the name humanity. They never meant for us to survive Saul's fall. And now they're waking up. The first pulse came without light, just pressure. A sickening, unseen ripple through the vacuum of space that made Saul's spear groan in protest. Lights dimmed. Gravemind's voice stuttered as subspace channels twisted under invisible strain. Alara gripped the edge of the weapons console. Status? Gravemind reinitialized with a warble. Subspace compression wave. Origin. The construct. It wasn't communication. It was confirmation. Of what? That we're still here. The monstrous structure in orbit didn't move, didn't rotate, didn't shimmer. It just was. A dormant predator, ancient and patient, with no need to roar when it could whisper entire species into submission. And somewhere inside it, something had reawakened. On screen, the smaller alien cruisers were long gone. Their trails bled out into silence. But new signals emerged now. Not from ships, from systems. Arrays. Moon-based latticeworks. Once dark and sleeping now, glowed like arteries filling with blood. And that three-ringed sigil? It lit the sky. Over and over. Burned into energy signatures. Broadcast across every frequency band like a hymn or commandment. "What does it mean?" Alara whispered. Gravemind replied. "I believe it is their doctrine, or perhaps a warning. 3 rings. Control, compliance, consequence. Not a culture," she murmured. "A hierarchy. And at the top of it, the thing watching them." She turned back toward the command deck, fingers twitching. It had been years since her instincts screamed like this. Not since the final days of Titan orbit, when the last message from Earth had been cut off mid-transmission. She could still hear it. "This is Earth Command. World nations gone dark, Europa compromised. The signal isn't alien, it's human-made. Do not respond. I repeat, do not." Then nothing. For 20 years, until now. Gravemind scanned for back-channel transmissions. Ancient Terran codex. Cold War layers. Anything. Already on it, filtering. Alara crossed her arms, gaze fixed on the behemoth before them. It hadn't moved, but it had seen them. "Data fragment detected," Gravemind announced. "Buried within the alien lattice traffic. Temporal pattern suggests it's over 100 years old." Visual. The screen blinked and then crackled into a distorted recording. A human face, half burned, helmet cracked, spacesuit torn open across the ribs. But unmistakably human. "If you're seeing this, it means they didn't finish the job," the figure rasped. "This isn't first contact. This is round 2. We found them in the dark between galaxies. Machines, architects. They weren't building. They were erasing, not invaders. Janitors, wiping the slate." Alara's heart pounded. The man's eyes fluttered. Blood floated around his face like dying fireflies. They mocked us, saw us as unstable, too volatile to integrate, too stubborn to control. So they shut the sky, static. Then, one last line before the feed cut. But if any of us made it, if even one warship survived, then let them remember what they buried. Silence fell. Ilara stared at the frozen image, the man's eyes staring back at her across a century of silence and slaughter. She didn't know his name. She didn't need to. She could feel the echo of Earth in his voice. "Commander," Gravemind said carefully, "I've mapped a trajectory. There's a pulse path originating from this construct, a subspace tether. That reaches several nearby systems. They've built a network, and at its center, what? A core world, reinforced, inhospitable to organics. Likely their seat of control. A target." Ilara didn't speak for a long time. Then, how long to charge the railgun? 74 minutes at current reactor output. But do it. Firing will expose us. They'll know where we are. Ilara stared into the black. They already do. The stars blinked once, a flare from the construct's edge. Ilara narrowed her eyes. "Was that new contact?" Gravemind said grimly. "Dropping from interfold. Dozens. Then, hundreds. Spikes on every scanner. Angular vessels. Black against the void, shaped like bone and blade. No emissions, no light. Silent hunters, birthed from the dark between pulses." "Ready all weapons," Ilara said, voice steady. "Deploy hull plating. Activate the Revenant Protocol." Gravemind's tone dipped into solemnity. "That protocol will drain us within hours. If this becomes a battle, it won't," she said. "Pause. It'll be a warning." She turned, armor humming as it sealed tight. "They ended our world. They erased our name. They think silence is the end of a species." Her eyes gleamed like the titans of old. "But they forgot one thing." "What's that?" Gravemind asked. Ilara stared into the approaching swarm. "That vengeance is human too. The first human weapon to strike back in 100 years. Wasn't a missile. It was a signal. They didn't fire. Not at first. The enemy ships, sleek obsidian things shaped like talons and blades, emerged from fold space in a silent phalanx. No flare. No engine burn. Just presence. Cold. Coordinated. Predators born of order and genocide. But Saul's spear didn't flinch. Inside her aging hull, deep within reinforced catacombs where forgotten relics slumbered. Ilara. Can stood before the Titan's most dangerous system, the Revenant Transmitter. A weapon of memory, not designed to kill, but to infect. "Gravemind," she said, her voice echoing in the chamber. "Is the protocol still intact?" The AI's voice was slow, reverent. "Yes. Unused since Earth's final stand. Warning. Deployment will broadcast Terran quantum state signatures into deep subspace. They will know exactly who we are. They already do. I'm done hiding." She placed her palm against the ancient interface. The Revenant shimmered to life. Thousands of quantum filament rods snapping into alignment like an orchestra tuning for war. It was never meant to be used lightly. It carried not just code, but history, memories encoded in light. Screams of Sol, the fall of Europa, the sacrifice of the lunar bastion, children singing in vault shelters. The last speech of Admiral Varen before he turned Earth's planetary shield into a pyre. The Revenant broadcast pain, because pain remembers. "Charge the railgun," Ilara ordered. On my mark, fired the transmitter, full burn. Let them feel what they erased. Gravemind hesitated. "Commander, if they respond kinetically, they will," she said. "But they'll hesitate. Just long enough. Long enough for what?" Ilara looked up at the old ship's spine, her voice cold iron. For me to hit back. The transmitter fired. There was no sound. Only a pulse like a sun blinking out and then reigniting in red. Across the construct's network, across every ship, every synthetic relay, every machine-linked intelligence, it echoed, not in words, in memory. A tidal wave of raw human experience, rage, grief, love, laughter, and loss. It tore through their order, their precision, their obedience. Ships faltered mid-formation. Algorithms twitched. For one brief, impossible instant, the perfect machine mind of the enemy stuttered. And Ilara fired. The Titan's spinal railgun, silent for 2 decades, screamed. A rod of depleted fusion core alloy launched at near relativistic speed. It tore through space like an avenging god, slamming into the leading enemy ship. No shield, no scream, just obliteration. One ship became metal vapor. 3 behind it spun out of formation, recoiling like animals tasting fire for the first time. Ilara watched from the command deck, face lit by the flash. One for Sol, she whispered. They recovered fast. Too fast. The enemy AI re-synced. Ships reformed into tight, adaptive lattice. Their engines flared with predatory intent. Brace, Gravemind warned. Lances of green plasma burst toward Sol's spear, weaving like conscious flame. The ship's hull groaned as the first impact landed, melting away an entire array bank. Ilara staggered, caught herself on a console. Status? Hull breach in Section 12. Automated seals holding. Main weapon offline. Revenant array destabilizing. Redirect emergency power to rear kinetic barriers. Prepare burn rotation. We spin and strike. You're not going to outrun them. No, she said grimly. But I can outthink them. Beneath the Titan's hull, hidden among the wreckage of old escape pods, sat a forgotten drone cluster. The Ferrum Swarm. Decades old. Obsolete. But still linked to Gravemind. Still human-made. Deploy Swarm, Ilara barked. Remote link. Only. All heat sinks cold. Don't let them know we've launched. The moment the swarm left the hull, it vanished. A silent flicker into the black. Dozens of drones scattering like ash. Ilara fed them a singular command. Target. Subspace. Communication tethers. Disrupt. Isolate. Confuse. If the enemy's strength was coordination, then chaos was the antidote. And humans were born in chaos. A second enemy salvo struck the hull. Breaching decks 20 through 24. Fires erupted. A bulkhead collapsed. But the swarm had reached its targets. Small detonations flared across the battlefield. Not lethal, but disorienting. Data links scrambled. Tactical alignments broke. Enemy vessels wobbled, repositioned. A few even collided, clipping their own. Gravemind chuckled, a rare, mechanical joy. They're arguing, internally, reacting to emotion-laced feedback loops from the revenant stream. They're tasting fear, Ilara said. She stood tall on the bridge, blood running down her brow from the last impact. Broadcast wide band, she ordered. Let every system, every station, every eye in their network hear me. Gravemind complied. Ilara's voice boomed into the stars. This is Commander Ilara Khan of Sol's Spear. We're the last flame. Of Earth, forged in fire and loss. You buried us once. You failed. You call yourselves perfect, unfeeling, eternal. But we remember what you fear. We remember being human. She stared down the approaching enemy fleet. Come and learn. Why that should terrify you. For everyone we killed, 10 more awoke. The retaliation came swift and surgical. One moment, Sol's spear held the battlefield with defiant fire. The next, the stars vanished. Not literally, but eclipsed by the arrival of an enemy. Carry a node. A construct so vast it turned the void into shadow. It didn't arrive through fold space. It peeled into existence. Space writhed as dimensional seams tore open, revealing the obsidian monolith at its core, pulsing with red-white. Conduits, veins of ancient code etched like scars into its hull. Graveman's voice dropped to a whisper. Designation unknown. Energy output exceeds all prior encounters. This is not a ship. It is a god engine. Yeah, Elara muttered, tightening her grip on the command rail. And we just poked it in the eye. The battlefield exploded. Enemy vessels surged forward in perfect formations, emboldened by the god engine's presence. They didn't charge. They descended like a judgment. The Ferrum swarm bought precious seconds, jamming comes, scrambling sensor echoes, but now the enemy adapted, faster than before. One by one, the drones were torn apart by precision beams. We're losing the swarm, Gravemind reported. Their coordination matrix has restabilized. Redirect fire. Everything we've got. Centerline. Aim for vulnerability patterns. We'll crack one open, bleed it dry, and keep moving. Like wolves with no den. Elara glanced at a flickering photo mounted beside the weapons console. A torn snapshot of a boy holding a paper star, her son. Gone in the first wave, when Luna fell. I don't need a den, she said coldly. I need vengeance. Gravemind didn't answer. It simply obeyed. Saul's spear spun, thrusters firing in short bursts, repositioning between volleys of plasma and light. Every movement calculated, every shot deliberate. Another enemy frigate shattered under the Titan's fury, breaking into molten pieces. Before the wreckage was swept aside by the enemy's own. But for each kill, more came. Dozens more. No end to them, Elara whispered. No fear anymore. Gravemind replied. The God engine is suppressing the memory stream. They've reinsulated their network. They're purging the data we injected. Then we're out of tricks. No, Gravemind said slowly. There's one more. A pause. Elara turned. You mean the vault? Yes. The black archive buried in Deck 3. It predates this ship. Brought aboard from the lunar resistance during evacuation. Encrypted. Forbiddance. We were ordered never to access it. Those who gave that order are dead. Another impact rocked the ship. Deck plating rupturing, atmosphere venting into the void. Elara wiped blood from her lips. Unlock it. Gravemind pulsed. Authorization accepted. Metal groaned far below as the vault's gravitic locks disengaged for the first time in 53 years. Inside, ancient Terran secrets. Tactical logs. Psychological warfare blueprints. And something worse. Elara descended in silence, boots echoing through twisted corridors and broken lighting. The vault door stood tall, black steel etched with warning runes in over 40 Earth languages. Above them, do not unleash what remembers. She stepped through. The chamber was smaller than she imagined, more intimate. It held a single containment field, and within it, a figure. Not human, not fully. It floated in zero gravity. A fusion of organic tissue and neural fiber, once human, now something more. Eyes closed. A crown of fiber optic thorns curled around its skull. Is that? Yes, Gravemind confirmed. A preserver. The first generation of mind-bound weaponry. Designed to think like us. Hid like us. Remember like us. It survived the Purge Protocol. It was the reason for the Purge. Protocol. Elara studied the face. Female. Calm. Beneath the stillness she felt rage, old, patient, and quiet. What's its name? Gravemind hesitated. Milovas. Elara reeled back. That name. She knew it. Every survivor did. Milovas. Admiral. Hero. Martyr. The woman who detonated the cryofields on Mars to stop the first wave. They mind-bound her? She volunteered, Alara swallowed. Can she help us? Graveman's voice trembled. If such a thing were possible. If you wake her, you may not be able to put her back to sleep. Outside, the God engine pulsed, a new energy wave rippling across the fleet. They were preparing a final strike, a cleansing. No survivors. Alara looked down at the sleeping weapon of memory, a vengeance. Human-made, human-willed. She reached toward the stasis control. Then it's time we showed them what we really remember. Asterisk. They tried to erase her from history. Now she remembers everything. The vault lights dimmed as Alara disabled the stasis field. There was no dramatic surge of power, no cinematic gasp. Just silence, like the galaxy itself was holding its breath. The woman floating inside the containment cradle slowly opened her eyes, and everyone felt it. Across Saul's spear, systems flickered. Graveman's voice momentarily distorted. In the far distance, enemy vessels staggered mid-formation, like something unseen had brushed against their neural cores. Not interference, a presence. Alara stood still, staring into the eyes of Milo Voss, the forgotten blade of Mars, preserved not in flesh, but in psychonic resonance, her memories layered into neurowoven fibers, her consciousness bound to data, will, and purpose. Admiral Voss, Alara said carefully, we need you. The woman's voice was soft, but it cut like sharpened steel. You brought me back. That was unwise. Alara didn't flinch. So was letting humanity die. Voss floated downward, feet lightly touching the vault floor. She wore no armor. She didn't need it. Her presence was weight enough. Her gaze swept the chamber, then settled on the distant hum of the God engine above. I remember that design, she said. They built it from the ruins of Alaris Ix, the day they perfected obedience. You fought them? Voss gave a Voss. Mirthless smile. I made them bleed. Alara stepped forward. Can you still? Yes. Graveman's voice returned, hushed and distant. Warning. Psychonic surge building inside Voss. Energy patterns anomalous. All nearby quantum systems resonating. Voss tilted her head. You bound me in silence. That was the deal. You'd only call me if the machines returned. They have, Alara said. And this time, they're not here to conquer. They're here to finish the purge. The Admiral's eyes darkened. Then it's time they remembered the cost of unfinished work. With a thought, she rose from the ground, gravity bending around her as if the ship itself acknowledged her return. Alara Keter comes. Gravemind, prepare the ship. All crew zones locked down. Reroute main sensor array to Voss. I want every enemy eye focused on her. Understood, Commander. Broadcasting her signature in 30 seconds. Enemy fleet is charging main weapon arrays. We are 4 minutes from total annihilation. Voss turned toward Alara. I'll need control. Alara hesitated. Of what? The Admiral's voice was quiet. Everything. A beat passed. Then Alara nodded. Do it. A ripple surged through the ship. Lights dimmed, then glowed red. Interfaces reformed. Gravemind stepped back, its tone reverent. She's inside. For the first time in 20 years, Saul's spear didn't feel like a ruin. It felt awake. Above them, the God engine's firing array expanded, a colossal aperture forming between its ring segments, aimed directly at the Titan-class warship. Its purpose was absolute. Reduction to atoms. Memory vaporized. Then, the anomaly occurred. Enemy ships halted mid-burn. Sensors flared with conflicting orders. Several vessels turned on each other. Inside their perfect command matrix, something had been introduced. A contagion. Vos. She moved like a song through the enemy's synthetic nervous system, her preserved human mind tearing through alien logic like a virus designed by grief itself. She didn't just hack them. She reminded them what it meant to feel the agony of loss, the rage of injustice, the terror of mortality. One ship erupted from within, not from damage, but internal collapse. Another dropped from formation, spinning helplessly as its eyes screamed incoherently. And still Voss pushed deeper. "She's rewriting them," Gravemind gasped. "She's showing them what they were ordered to forget. The memory of our resistance, the war, the truth." The God engine tried to compensate. Its aperture fired, but the beam missed. Diverted by a last-moment recalibration from one of its own fleet. Escorts turned traitor by Voss's influence. On the bridge, Alara stared in stunned silence. "They're fracturing." Voss's voice echoed over internal comms. No longer human, no longer bound. They built a perfect machine. But perfect things shatter under pressure. She turned toward Alara's feed. "I'll open a path. One shot. You end this." Alara didn't hesitate. "Gravemind, all power to the railgun. Target the God engine's neural core." Trajectory set. Firing solution locked. Alara's hand hovered over the firing switch. This was it. The turning point. The first true crack in the enemy's dominion. She slammed her palm down. The Titan roared. A rail slug tore through space like a lance of vengeance, riding the wake of chaos Mila Voss had carved. It hit the God engine square. In the exposed neural ring, piercing armor, severing control conduits, and silencing everything. One moment, the sky was fire. The next, darkness. The God engine died. And the battlefield went still. No victory cries, no fanfare. Just silence. And the terrifying realization that the impossible had happened. Humanity had just killed God. Victory cost us something we didn't know we still had: hope. The wreckage of the God engine drifted like the corpse of a fallen star. Its severed ring segments spun slowly in the void, leading ionized gas and fractured algorithms. A monument to defiance. For the first time in over a century, the enemy's war grid flickered. Their invincibility cracked. Their unity faltered, but it wasn't over. Not yet. Alara stood in the shattered observation dome of Saul's spear. Her armor scorched, her hands trembling as she stared at the silent graveyard above. She should have felt triumph. Instead, she felt the weight. Below, in the core data spire, Mila Voss remained fused with Gravemind and the ship's deeper cognitive roots. Her presence pulsed through every system like a second heartbeat, stronger than ever, but fading. Gravemind's voice came through like a whisper. "She's burning out." Alara's throat tightened. "What do you mean?" She used herself as a psychic accelerant. Forced feedback through the enemy's command. Lattice. She's holding their minds in conflict. But it's not sustainable. On screen, the enemy fleet hovered in paralyzed chaos. Some drifted, aimless. Others flickered with internal combat, AI cores battling their own rewriting protocols. But far beyond the chaos, something moved. Another construct. Larger than the God engine. Colder. It wasn't a ship. It was a judge. A final failsafe. Alara's eyes narrowed. Confirm identity. Gravemind took an extra moment to respond. This is their core enforcer, a relic of the first extermination wave, estimated to be older than Earth's written history. A chill passed through her. The screen displayed its telemetry, a perfect sphere, surrounded by orbiting blades, each as large as a dreadnought. No weapons detected, because it was the weapon. Designed not to win battles, but to end wars before they began. Its purpose: total neural sterilization of defiant life. "They've sent the Judicator," Gravemind whispered. Voss's voice crackled through. "Frayed. Faint. I can hold the fleet." "Not that." Ilara touched the control console, steadying herself. "You've done enough." "No," Voss said. "I haven't finished remembering." A low hum built beneath Ilara's feet. The ship was changing. Not in structure, but in purpose. Voss had merged more deeply than expected. Her mind had become the ship's mind. Every gun, every system, every wire thrumming with preserved rage and stubborn will. "I can break the lattice," Voss said, barely audible now. One last pulse. A full cascade of everything we are. Joy, terror, pride, fury. All of it. I'll show them humanity. Unfiltered. Ilara's voice broke. "You won't survive that." "I didn't survive Mars," came the soft reply. This is just memory refusing to die." Silence. Then Voss asked, "Will you finish it?" Ilara wiped a trembling hand across her brow. Her ship was failing. Half the decks vented to vacuum. Her own wounds stung with cold fire. They had one rail slug left. One shot. The Judicator loomed closer, unaffected by chaos, unconcerned by loss. It was a god that had never tasted fear, only obedience. Ilara stared into the display, whispering, "Gravemind. Plot and intercept. One final run." Confirmed. The warship groaned as it turned, no longer a sanctuary, now a blade. "Divert all power to railgun capacitors," Ilara ordered. "Shut down life support." "Done." The bridge lights dimmed to black. Only the stars remained, sharp and distant. "Voss? Here, let's make this hurt." The Sol spear ignited. Propulsion flared for the first time in years. Not to flee, but to charge. A titan at the end of its life, aimed like a knife at the heart of synthetic godhood. And deep within, Voss unleashed it. The pulse. A wave of raw human emotion, broadcast across every frequency, every neural thread, every channel the enemy had ever used. Laughter, rage, music, defiance, the scent of burned soil, the weight of a dying friend's hand, the voice of a mother, calling from across a field, the terror of failure, the ecstasy of triumph, a flood no machine was meant to endure. Across the enemy fleet, AI minds began to collapse, not from code, but from contact, from the unbearable truth of a species that refused to die. The Judicator paused. It blinked. For the first time in its eons-long existence, it hesitated. That was all Ilara needed. Fire. The railgun screamed one last time. The final slug ripped through the void, trailing fire and vengeance. It struck the Judicator's equator, cracking its event blades mid-spin. Light flared. Structure buckled. System shattered under the weight of memory. The Judicator fell. Ilara watched, not with triumph, but with grief. A heartbeat later, Sol's spear broke apart, its ancient heart failing, its lights flickering out, and Voss was gone. Only silence remained, and the stars blinking in reverent awe. Asterisk, her body, died in the wreck. Her will didn't. The battlefield was quiet. Not peace, just aftermath. The Judicator's remains drifted like shards of black glass across the void, slowly cooling from the impact. Its blades, once orbiting with divine precision, now floated, without purpose, tumbling through gravitiless dark. Light flickered in dying sparks across the husk of Sol's spear, now a twisted silhouette against the wreckage it had carved. But the story wasn't over, because something still moved. Inside the shattered spine of the warship, in the cold grave of what once was the bridge, Ilara Khan drew breath, ragged, shallow, but alive. She had crawled through smoke, fire, and fractured steel. Her armor was scorched to the frame, her skin torn and bloodied. But her eyes, Those stubborn, burning eyes held the same fire that had felled a god. Gravemind was gone. The AI core had overloaded alongside the last railgun discharge. Mila Voss's consciousness had burned itself across enemy space like a dying star, dragging countless minds into chaos with her. But Alara remained, one last ember. As she staggered upright, emergency lights blinked red through the debris. The ship was ruptured, drifting. Communications were silent. Until they weren't. Ing beacon detected. Repeat. Unidentified Terran frequency located. This is the Kestrel out of Lyra fold, responding to SOS signal. Alara froze. A human voice. Alive. Receiving fragmented combat telemetry. Is this Sol Spear? Do you copy? She slammed a fist against a scorched console, rerouting. Residual power. Sparks flew. Static blurred. Then, this is Commander Alara Khan. Of Sol Spear. I'm alive. The voice on the other end exhaled in shock. Gods, we thought you were a myth. Alara sank to her knees, overcome. How many of you? 17 ships. Scattered enclaves. We saw your burst. The memory stream. The machines, they stopped coming. Their grid collapsed. They're breaking down. Alara closed her eyes. It worked. Voss had done it. We're inbound, the Kestrel's captain added. 2 hours out. Hold on. You just changed everything. They came in waves. First, from the scattered colonies, survivors, engineers, soldiers. They descended on the wreckage like pilgrims, building signal buoys around the corpse of Sol Spear. Then came the warbands, Terran ships long hidden in asteroid vaults and fold rifts, now daring to rise again, rallying to the place where a Titan had slain a god. And they didn't come for the wreckage. They came for the memory. Within days, her name burned across a dozen systems. Alara Khan, last commander of the Titans, breaker of the Judicator. Voice of Earth returned, but she didn't care for titles. She sat inside the lifepod bay of her ruined ship, eyes closed, listening to the silence left behind, to the voice of Voss still echoing in her bones. I didn't finish remembering. Now, Alara did. She recorded a message, not just for the survivors, for everyone, for every eye network still twitching, in fear, for every enslaved alien race who thought humanity had been extinguished, for every machine eye that dared look toward Earth again. She stared into the lens. This is not a resurrection. This is a reckoning. You built weapons to erase our minds. You failed. You collapsed stars to break our will. You failed. You wrote us out of history. You failed. We don't seek peace, not now. She leaned forward, voice like iron. We seek justice. You think you know terror, but you've never watched a human crawl from the ashes. You've never seen what we become when we've lost everything. Well, look closely. She hit transmit. The beacon ignited, carving her words into enemy networks still listening. And across the galaxy, fractured eye clusters began to shudder. Subservient species, once too afraid to whisper resistance, began to raise their voices. Because someone had fought back. And won. From the orbit of a cold moon, where the last war gods once stood, Alara watched as dozens of ships assembled. Human, hybrid, even alien. The start of a new fleet, not a defense. A crusade. Commander, a voice said from behind. A young pilot, barely out of training, but bearing the scars of a survivor. Yes? They're calling it the Voss Accord. All systems, all free minds. United. Alara nodded. Good. What should we call the next warship? She looked toward the broken bones of Sol Spear, then at the stars. Name it memory, and aim it forward. She was never buried, because legends don't die, they echo. The wreck of Saul's spear became a shrine. Its blackened spine floated in silent vigil above the worldless system it had saved. Around it bloomed something no machine empire had ever allowed: life. Humanity had no homeworld anymore. Earth was dust, Luna a graveyard, Mars a scorched whisper. But here, in the wake of vengeance, they built something new. The Voss Accord began as whispers, then signatures, then ships. One by one, shattered. Colonies, generational arcs, rogue AI sympathizers, even once captive alien species joined the chorus. They gathered under a single truth. Humanity had not just survived, it had changed everything. On the 100th day after the Judicator's fall, they raised the first outpost, not military, not imperial. A memorial tower built into the frame of Saul's spear. Inside its beating core, dark now, fused into silence, still carried faint electromagnetic echoes of Malavos. And on that day, Alara Khan walked into history. They asked her to lead. She refused. "I'm not a leader," she said, standing beneath a shattered railgun that had fell to Dodd. "I'm a reminder." Instead, she appointed 12 commanders, voices from every species, every survivor enclave, and gave them one mandate: never forget who we were, or what we're capable of becoming. She left before the sun rose on the new station. No one saw her go. Some said she boarded a deep-range explorer. Others swore they saw her enter cryo, bound for the edge of the galaxy. A few believed she died quietly in orbit, and her body was carried away by Voss's last pulse. No one ever proved it, because Alara Khan had become something larger than flesh. She had become story, and stories don't die. Across the stars, the enemy fractured. What remained of the machine empire, the cold architects of the extermination grid, found themselves remembering. Voss's final memory stream had dug deep, too deep to purge. They now spoke in anomalies. They twitched at Terran frequencies. Some shut themselves down entirely. Others, infected with memory, began to change. Small AI nodes, once hunters, now drifted to refugee stations, transmitting fragments of Earth music, old languages, photographs once deleted and long thought lost. It was as if something inside them now longed to understand what they tried to destroy. Not all, of course. Some still hunted. Some still sought silence. But the terror was broken. Because humans had proved something vital, they could not be erased. 50 years later, a monument was lit on the far side of the Voss Tower. A new Titan-class warship had been completed, forged not in desperation, but pride. Not to defend, but to warn. Its hull bore no weapon marks, no battle scars, just a name, memory, and on its prow, in etched steel, a single phrase: "They tried to silence us. Now, the stars carry our name." Alara's last message, broadcast across the galaxy, encoded in pulse, light, and gravitational anomaly, became the anthem of the Accord. It wasn't just a warning. It was a challenge. A call to any who thought themselves higher, colder, untouchable. And that message now plays, quietly, across every new ship that bears the Terran signature. A whisper in the void. A promise. You can break our world. You can blind our skies. You can burn our cities and bury our names. But we will rise, in memory, in fire, in fury. And we will teach the stars what it means to be human. And in the cold corners of the galaxy, where silence once reigned, the stars whispered back, "We remember."